number one to get there.
Yes, absolutely. A perfect segue into the list portion of the show, breaking down the wide receiver ones. This was definitely interesting. Again, reminding everyone this doesn't count the wide receiver twos on the team, even if a T. Higgins would certainly be among the top 32
Yeah.
in the NFL. He is not a candidate for this list, and so on and so forth. Mark, you went first the first two lists. You mind if I take a crack at
Go. Yeah.
kicking us off here
Or we start with
with wide
top
receivers?
fives.
I don't think we'll have too much disagreement with the top five. There might be like one guy that, we
All right.
swap
I'm
out or
interested.
something like
Okay.
that. I think the bottom's like really, really interesting because I felt like I had 13 candidates that I was kind of like messing around with. There were some that were, locks. But then like when it came down to like the, 29th
I had
and
10 names.
28th.
I had 10, so I wasn't too far off from you.
Yeah. Number one for me, I have Jamar Chase. I do think he's the best in the NFL because he's now been the most consistent at producing massive games. When he first came into the league on the heels of Justin Jefferson, Jefferson was the one who was putting up consistent, massive numbers, and Chase was really boom or bust. He has now become just boom, essentially, when he's healthy and on the field. I think he's the most dynamic wide receiver in the league. And so, pair that with having Joe Burrow as his quarterback. To me, he's number one. JJ, though, still is number two in my mind, especially with what he's had at quarterback in his career. I still think Justin Jefferson's like the second most talented wide receiver in the NFL. Definitely a more polished route runner, and his hands are crazy. So yeah, he comes in as an easy number two for me. Number three, maybe this is where we divert. I don't know. I'll be interested to see. Amon-Ra St. Brown makes the list for me.
Okay. Okay.
And that's mainly because of his route running prowess. He's the best route runner in the league, I think. And he has just been an incredible asset in multiple, like he can play anywhere along the line of scrimmage, which I think is a really valuable asset. Whereas, Justin Jefferson and Chase are primarily the X receivers. Amon-Ra's that guy that can play from the slot, and he tends to dominate anywhere he goes. So I just like his versatility as a wide receiver, and that's why he gets the nod ahead of a guy like my number four guy, which is CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, another big play threat, kind of reminds me of Justin Jefferson in a lot of ways because of the quarterback play. He hasn't had elite quarterback play in his time, yet still is able to dominate. I mean, we saw with Cooper Rush, absolutely making huge plays happen, and despite not having that elite arm to kind of, help get you over the hump in some regards. And CD2 last year, nearly having the 1,200 yards receiving, over 100 catches in that type of environment with all of the turmoil that they endured. I thought that's something that's really special and deserving of that spot. And then five for me to round things out is Puka Nacua. Dude is something
Ooh.
else. To be able to beat out instantly Cooper Kupp, who I know has now since regressed, um, to me says a lot about who this guy is and the player he is. He's a scrappy, better version of like what Deebo Samuel brought for so many years to the 49ers. I just like, and maybe it's because I wanted to really get this like well-rounded list of receivers. So that might have influenced a little bit. I know not having AJ Brown on here would probably be a big point of contention for many. But I also do think AJ Brown is a little bit limited. This isn't to say that he's not a good wide receiver. I'd probably put him at like 6 or 7. But I do just think that his overall tree, he's like, 90% of his plays seem to come from the go ball, and that's where I just think that there are some limitations there when it comes to some of these other players. So that's my top five.
Yeah, listen, I think you and I again we're pretty lockstep here. I did have Justin Jefferson at 1, and it's
Okay.
1.
1A, 1B.
It's not even 1A, 1B. It was so splitting hairs. And the only reason I give Justin Jefferson the slight nod is I do worry about Jamar Chase's injuries a little bit. I think Jamar Chase, to me, is probably the most talented. I think he's the most talented wide receiver. But I think as far as a wide receiver number 1 goes, Justin Jefferson's demeanor, his consistency, his ability to do availability. He had 2 years ago, he missed 6 games, but even then still cut over 1,000 yards. His ability to work with multiple different quarterbacks. I know that he works with different quarterbacks. I don't know that Jamar Chase doesn't. I would assume Jamar Chase does. I don't know that he does. And I also think it's going to be, to me, there's just like, my first list, I had Jamar Chase. My second list, I had Justin Jefferson. And the third time I did it, I stuck with Justin Jefferson. So I'm sticking with it. There's just if you told me I could have either one,
you're happy with either one.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard. So they're 1 and 2, and I'm not going to fight anyone for going the other way because I'm fighting myself, right? As you can tell right now. Number 3 for me, I do differ. But again, it's a 1 spot different. I have CD at 3 and I have Amon-Ra at 4. And again, I'm the biggest Amon-Ra fan in the world. The only reason I put CD ahead is because CD doing it in Dallas as the only weapon for the last 2 years offensively. Yeah. And with Dak and the injuries that Dak went up and down in the different quarterbacks they played, he's special. And CD reminds me a little bit of just the skill set of like Randy Moss that no one else in the league truly has right now, where you're just like, it's so easy. His speed is smooth. It's not labored. He's tall. He's long. He catches massive big plays all the time. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, on the other hand, as a wide receiver number 1, CD is more to me of a prototype. Is like, that's a wide receiver number 1. Amon-Ra is the modern NFL 2025. Like, anyone could be a wide receiver number 1 because it's so much more open and things like that. So I think there's a little more history for me that leans towards CD's body type, his play. He's an X receiver, goes over the top, deep post routes, bombs. Where Amon-Ra, it's a little bit more of this modern NFL where it's like, get him a bubble screen with space, and that's just going to run over 5 people. And he's going to, and he's also really crisp on like a 3rd and 5 at running an amazing route and getting himself open. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. But again, if I have Amon-Ra St. Brown on my team, the next thing I think is, shit, I need a Jameson Williams. I need a guy who's a burner, who's like over the top, like size and speed. With my wide receiver number 1, I just kind of want that settled. You know what I mean? And then I'll go find a Ladd McConkey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Ladd's a guy who I think it's funny because he's a wide receiver number 1 for Chargers, but he wasn't anywhere near the bottom for me, just because again, he's like feisty, even though he's typically in my prototype offense, you'd have CD Lamb as your 1 and Ladd McConkey as your 2. So I think does that make sense? What I'm trying to say is why I preference slightly, but again, it's splitting hairs. Amon-Ra is a dog. He is an absolute dog, and I love him and his dad.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense to me for sure. I understand where you're coming from. I think for me, it was more about the productivity at the end of the day.
True.
And I guess, so it's like a flip side argument, because your point's well taken. On the flip side, from CD being the only guy, Amon-Ra was able to put up 115 catches and 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns when they're in a run-heavy offense
and with other
2
good wide
receiving backs,
true,
and other wide receivers, and an all-pro tight end, and you still were able to dominate the target share and demand that kind of attention from your offense. To me, that says something as well. And he just had the better overall season. But to be fair to CD, Jared Goff was throwing him the football the whole time, where CD is getting the ball thrown to him, Cooper Rush for half the year. So like I
And with
understand where
a Mike McCarthy offense, it's way less creative than a Ben Johnson offense.
right,
And it will
absolutely.
be
Yeah.
interesting to see what Amon-Ra's stat line is if he plays all 17 games. I don't even know who the new offensive coordinator for the Lions is. I can't name him.
I don't
That's
even
maybe
know. Maybe
bad
it's
for
Matt
me to admit.
Patricia. Maybe they brought Matt Patricia and
Good God. The Lions
bring him
fans would
back
be,
to Detroit.
though they wouldn't have plus 1,000 odds to win the Super Bowl. Then I'm
I don't
telling you
think
that.
so.
And then
All right.
at five,
Oh
I
yeah.
have
Fine.
AJ Brown. I put AJ Brown
Okay.
slightly ahead of it, number 6. So I used when he was doing these lists at 6. I wrote Puka Nacua. So I'm with you there, lockstep. My
Well,
thing
look,
with
PFF agrees with you too because PFF had AJ Brown as the number 1 wide receiver
and
in the
and
league,
that's a
and
little
that seems
crazy.
too much.
I think just because purely, and again, if this was 15 years ago, yeah, absolutely. AJ Brown is the prototype number 1 guy. But we've seen now in the modern NFL, the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson body of that 6'6" who's just like fluid and really kind of makes catches all, wild angles, arm stretching. That's now the guy you look for is like your true number 1, the special athlete wide receiver that Odell Beckham Jr., in my opinion, kind of changed the game for. And it's no shock that then you see all these other LSU guys emerge in that
Yeah.
prototype of what Malik Neighbors. I mean, these are the guys, Brian Thomas Jr. You're like, wow, they are just, it's just a factory now of like these really impressive 5'11" to 6'2", where they're just making these wild body catches. Where if you were a 6'2" wide receiver 15 years ago, it was straight speed, or go up and get it type of ball. It's just different. But I think AJ Brown, productivity in 2 different places, in 2 different systems, with multiple different offensive coordinators that the Eagles have dealt with, and another new offensive coordinator. He's a special player. He's a really special player. He's just in an era right now with some really elite wide receiver number 1s. I would also then include the next other names in that list for me with Puka were Neighbors, Thomas Jr. I know they were only rookies, but they were just so impressive. And then DJ Moore. I think you have to consider him as a guy. He's Amon-Ra St. Brown light. Like he is, if you love Amon-Ra St. Brown, you can't tell me you don't love DJ Moore then too.
Yeah, no, DJ Moore is great. They're both fantastic players. So yeah, no, I agree with you on that front. All right, should we go to the bottom of the wide receiver 1 pool?
So I will say really quick before we jump into this.
Yeah.
What was interesting for me, again, as you go through lists of, if you just search lists of the best wide receivers, by number 10, you're going to start seeing some wide receiver number 2s. There are some teams that have elite wide receiver cores, 1s and 2s. There are wide receiver number 2s all across this league that I will say to you right now, I would take over all 5 of the guys, the names I'm looking at right now, as, if he could be my number 1, I'm taking him over these guys. And also, just because your wide receiver 1 is weak does not mean you have a weak receiving core. Does that make sense? Because some of these teams have a tight end who's an absolute stud. And so you say to yourself, okay, well, overall as a wide receiver core, it's not the worst in the league. But Dan, if you want to lead us off, I'm excited to see where you're going with this.
Yeah. All right, let's do it. So for me, and it pains me to say this, because I actually really like this player a lot. And
I'm interested.
Was a big fan going into the year because I thought he was going to have like a really big year, and it just kind of underwhelmed. And for me, I'm going to Buffalo with Khalil Shakir as the worst wide receiver 1 in the NFL. And based on your reaction, I'm guessing he may not even be in your bottom 5 at all. He's just not a wide receiver 1. Like that, to me, that's just at the end of the day, he's not that guy. And he's a very capable, shifty slot guy that can get you like a nice 3rd down catch. But look, in an offense that threw the ball a ton, that was, that gives you every opportunity to break through, 4 touchdowns in that offense, 800 yards, like that's not That's not doing it for me, man. Especially when they needed wide receiver production. They were starved for it. To me, that signals other things beyond just, um, you know, his um, positioning on the team itself. I just don't think that they view him as the wide receiver one on that team. I just don't know who is the wide receiver one on that team otherwise. So
So
assuming he is, that's where I put him.
okay. Now I kind
All
of
right.
want to go for this bottom. Can we just go pick for pick? Can I give my 5 now?
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
this is just because now I think this is really interesting because I think there's going to have some real debate here. Now I'm fascinated to see where this goes. So my number 5 is Jacoby Myers, Las Vegas Raiders. And
Okay.
my thing with Jacoby Myers is in New England last year, a fine season, like a fine season. But if you're telling me right now, Shakir or Jacoby Myers is like my guy, at least I feel like with Shakir, I have someone who had pop, and there was moments with Josh Allen where like, oh, and I agree with you. He's not what you want as your wide receiver number one prototype. But if I'm lining up and selling my fan base, don't worry, guys. We got Jacoby Myers as our number one guy. I'm not loving that as much as be like, hey, Shakir is 6', 190, little undersized, little spindly, but he's kind of a dog and he's a no nonsense, no drama guy. He doesn't, unlike Jacoby Myers, never had like drama surrounding him and his lack of production. I think there's just a vibes that I
Interesting.
prefer. I will say Shakir, I'll get to him, but I'm just saying, like, as far as that's where my mind went for bottom of the list is Jacoby Myers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think Jacoby Myers is a decent NFL player. I think he saw a little bit of a resurgence when he was able to move out of New England and get that fresh start. But at the end of the day, he's not among the top tier remotely. He belongs towards the bottom of this list. And I have him in my bottom 5.
Okay, all right,
But
okay,
I don't have him as I would take Jacoby Myers over Khalil Shakir,
all right, okay,
for sure.
okay. So
To
you're
me, at
4.
31, and I don't think this
31.
person will be here at the end of next season. But I need to see a lot more from Xavier Legette because
Okay.
right now, um, the production was poor last year. Granted, you play for Carolina, I get it, and I think he's certainly talented. But he is a guy that's had his drop issues. We've already got some health concerns. So I just need to see more. He's definitely got talent. There's a little bit of volatility there. But look, when I was thinking of the other guys on this list, they've just kind of put more out there on the field to be judged, and I kind of just trust their hands a little bit more at this stage. But he's a player I'm keeping my eye on for sure.
All right, less drama than I thought. I have Carolina at 31. Because McMillan from Arizona, they drafted him
Yeah, he'll
in the first
probably,
round, and Legette. But I agree with you, Legette / Thielen. Like, listen, if you're telling me, Mark, as a Bears fan, hey, you have no wide receivers and you get to pick one of those guys as your wide receiver number one, I'm not feeling confident. And I'd probably
yeah,
go McMillan over Legette just purely for like, well, I saw Legette and I agree with you. I like the guy's personality. I like the guy's work ethic, but
and he's big.
I was underwhelmed. And McMillan's big and lengthy, and so yes, Carolina's got a lot to prove. I agree with you. I think by the end of the year, we could be talking about maybe McMillan and Legette is like a really fine, solid duo. But right now, they haven't proven really anything to not belong in that. All right, okay, so we're back on schedule. You're number 30.
Yeah, my number 30 is Jacoby Myers. So we
Okay.
get there with Jacoby, not too far down for many of the reasons you stated. I do think he has been a little bit underrated throughout his career. Should he be the guy on a team? No, but he'd be a really, really good number 2, like a really solid number 2 wide receiver in this league. And yeah, so I think he's been also in unfortunate circumstances where he hasn't really been given the necessary teammates or position to succeed.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, he was in New England last year. It was a fine season. And obviously we look back at what New England, now we know kind of what they dealt with and their, um struggles with the coaching staff offensively and a rookie quarterback, and so he was fine. But I agree with you. I just don't, there's nothing about him that sells confidence to
Wait,
my.
was he with no, I don't think he was with New England last year.
Yeah, that he's,
I'm
yeah, I think
looking.
this is his first year with Las
No,
Vegas.
no, he's been with Vegas since 2023. This is his third season in Vegas.
Who am I thinking of in New England then? Where am my brain going? Because I was looking up Jacoby Myers,
Yeah,
and
I was
maybe I'm.
confused at first. I was like, wait, maybe I got this wrong. But no, yeah, he was in New England
Well,
from
then I like
2019 to
him even
2022.
less that he did last year. Last year
Um,
I couldn't even know where he
I
was.
I can't. Maybe you're thinking of N'Keal Harry or something. Like I
No,
don't
who's
know.
the other guy? Who's the one who had the blunder for New England versus the Raiders? It was like horrible, and he like threw the ball back. Remember, there was like the fail Mary on the final. Who was the New England?
Oh,
Two Bill Belichick's last year when it was like, and they threw it. I'm not
what
confusing
was
them.
that guy's name? Thornton?
No, but he was another like
Gosh.
failed wide receiver.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so
Anyway, we're,
we
we're
we
back
we
on track.
we digress. We don't like Jacoby Myers as a wide receiver number one.
It's not great.
I'm gonna go another. It's a little bit cheating, but again, I just don't know the name. I would say is Jaden Reed, but I'm gonna go the Green Bay Packers for me at 30. Now, again, you're just gonna say, look at all the shit behind you, Mark. You're just a hater. I don't think this is too much of a hater pick at 30. Maybe it's a spot or two too low, but when you look at the depth chart right now for the wide receiver room for the Green Bay Packers, they have Jane Reed as the wide receiver one, with Matthew Golden and Romeo Dobbs as the other starters, and then Christian Watkins with, of course, a questionable by him because he's never healthy.
Yeah.
Christian Watson is the prototype guy who, like, that's our one. That's a CeeDee Lamb-esque type player. Cannot stay healthy. And it's forced the Packers into this weird kind of, like, they have like Dobbs and Reed are very similar players. Wicks is very similar to them. And now you add Matthew Golden in, who's a guy I think is a fine player, but I wouldn't say he's a wide receiver one. He's not who I'd feel confident drafting as a wide receiver. No, now maybe he develops. And again, I'm going to say something nice about Green Bay. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I think going into this year, they know Christian Watson is not wide receiver number one anymore. So they're not trying to make that happen. One of these guys and Jordan Love may emerge. And by the end of the season, I might be saying, listen, maybe it's Reed, maybe it's Wicks, maybe it's Dobbs, maybe it's Golden. One of these guys might have 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns on 100 receptions. Like, all right, that's the guy. He's developed. I don't know if he'll still be a top 10 wide receiver, but he might bring this out of here. So I will just say, in my opinion, I think the Packers belong in this bottom 5. There's a lot of talent there, but there's no one who I'd feel confident saying that's your wide receiver number one going into the season, feeling great about that person leading my wide receiver room.
We're in lockstep again
Let's
because at
go.
29, I've got Jaden Reed, who I did list as number one, and I do think there's more meat left on the bone with Jaden Reed. He maybe isn't in the best system to showcase his talents, and you're also probably in a situation where there's too many just kind of wide receiver 2-esque players there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, he hasn't shown to be like a true number one. They certainly don't use him necessarily that way either. And so, yeah, when it came down to just looking at some of these other wide receivers on the list, I'd say, yeah, I'd take them over him. And so I'll just give you my 28 as
Yeah.
well, and then you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
give me your final two. This one was hard for me too because honestly, I was flirting with Stephon Diggs to put here. To be quite honest with you, I just think the guy's kind of toast now, but we'll see. No, Rashee Rice took the spot for me. He did because um, I think I think we're talking about like limitations as well. And when I was thinking of some of these other wide receivers, I don't think we've seen enough from Rashee Rice to have that much confidence in what he's got going on moving forward. Not let alone all of the cases that are pending, and the league is apparently not going to be issuing any sort of um,
Ruling
consequence or ruling. So it appears that he's going to be
available
starting and playing the whole season. Um,
if he's healthy. Remember, he tore
if
his
he's healthy,
ACL. Was it
it
knee
was
injury?
well, I think he had multiple things, but yeah, it's so there's the health concerns, and more so too is he's an interesting kind of case study at wide receiver because the way they'd used him was the quick hitting, let's just get him in space type of option. But we didn't really see Rashee Rice make any plays in the middle of the field or 20-yard dig routes or comeback routes. He really was the bubble screen, the traditional screen, the short drag, or the go ball. And so I need to see a lot more out of Rashee Rice to feel confident in him being like the wide receiver one going forward, because I'm not even convinced that KC, sees him as their true top guy down the road. Maybe they
I,
hope that Worthy becomes a more well-rounded player and takes that role himself. But yeah, I just don't see it from Rashee Rice right now.
So I love everything you just said there. I will say to you, my 28, no 29. So my second to the last pick here is Rashee Rice. So I'm really
Oh, okay.
glad you
All
were in
right.
lockstep
I
with
thought
me.
you were like, holy smokes. Okay.
No, because
Yeah, good.
I'm with you. I think legally, I think injury now, and I think even when he was healthy, he was never like putting up numbers where like, holy shit, he's blowing up the league.
Yeah.
And then he got injured,
Yeah.
or like, holy shit, he's incredible, like consistently 100-yard game, 100-yard game, 100-yard game, 100-yard game. Oh no, he got arrested. Like the numbers were sporadic. And I also think, to be honest with you, I think there's a fairness in starting to talk about looking at Mahomes' numbers and looking at what the wide receivers and what the offense is for the Kansas City Chiefs post Tyreek Hill. I think there's some really questions about Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator. I really think there's too much Matt Nagy influence on
Mm.
what the themes of the offense. Now I know it's Andy Reid, and I know that Andy Reid taught Matt Nagy everything. So you can argue, is it just more Andy Reid? We have not really seen since that first year that Tyreek Hill left, Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Second year Tyreek Hill left, Chiefs won the Super Bowl. But both times, Dan, it was a different Chiefs team. And the first year we are like, oh, it's kind of fun. Look at, they're now more dink and dunk and bubble screens. It is creative. And you're like, oh, they don't, and featured Kelsey way more. And you're like, they don't need them. They can do whatever. And then it was kind of like, oh man, they did it again with this kind of dink and dunk. But man, they did it again. Like, holy, but it barely beating the 49ers. Man, and then year 3 of it, it's like, when is Patrick Mahomes going to throw for 50 touchdowns again? Is that never? I mean, I get it. That never happens, but like, it doesn't look like he's
Yeah,
capable
it's
of
not even
doing that.
close, right?
It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
look
No, the
like
offense looks totally different.
he doesn't look like he's capable of doing it. It now looks like a team that's a defensive team with an offense that controls the football. And a lot of the offense, if in my opinion, looks a lot like I was banging my head against the wall with Matt Nagy. It's like, we're going to bubble screen you to death and then zone running game and short outs and stuff. And it's like, and I get it. You have a guy in Mahomes who's now smarter than a lot of defensive coordinators. He's seen everything. He can make every throw. So why not just possess the ball and do that? But when you have a wide receiver like Rashee Rice and now Xavier Worthy, like this core of wide receivers is not great. And I think that's maybe so maybe it's a product of they don't trust their wide receivers, so they're going to run small, short, easy routes. Or maybe it's, I don't know what it is. Maybe they've misevaluated, and so now they don't know what to do. But I think Rashee Rice is your wide receiver number 1. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about off the field things. I'm concerned about health, and I'm concerned about production. So I agree with you 100%. I flirted with Diggs too, but
Nice.
and when you said
Let's
it,
go.
so Diggs I had at my 27. He was the next name.
Same. Yeah.
So I'm going to stick to what I actually wrote because I think this is going to make for an interesting topic, and I do think I want to know your opinion on where this guy lands because
Bless you.
Plus, he hasn't been mentioned yet. At 28, I wrote the name Michael Pittman Jr.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your reaction to me saying that? Because I can make my argument, but I want to know what your reaction is. Is he in your sphere?
I don't
or
think
is
it's
that
outlandish. I wrote 4 spots after, and Michael Pittman was 24th for me.
okay?
So I put him at 24. I would
put him at
take him
28.
today over Diggs, Calvin Ridley, and Lad McConkey. That was the
Next.
grouping of players that I had coming there.
Oh, I think you're missing a big name there. I think you're missing a big name. Brandon Ayuk, I think, belongs in that category. Now, I get it. He had a star season. He had a 1,400-yard, 12 touchdown. But last year, remember, he held out all camp. It was drama.
Yeah,
he gets paid
a rough year for him.
Giant money, and then starts the season, looks like crap, and then devastating knee injury. So he's still not even back to 100%. And he's another offseason. So I'm worried about Brandon Ayuk a little bit. I get it. He's got more of a basis.
I'd probably still take him, though, over these guys.
I think I'd probably take Lad McConkey over Brandon Ayuk. I got to be honest.
I don't think
he's got Lad McConkey's just like, I love him. He's like
because his name's Lad.
He's Julian Edelman 2.0. He's Wes Welker 3.0. Like he's that guy. He's just fun. He's grinding. He's hungry. But
Pittman's had an interesting career because he's that guy that you're constantly like, he's got it. He can clearly do this. But then there are just like boneheaded drops randomly. And just the situation he's in is also brutal. And why is he just something's not washing because he's not even getting really the targets that you would expect a true, it's not like he's on a team. It's not like he's on the Packers where they've got 3 other at least wide receiver 2s. It's really Pittman, and then Pierce was one trick pony, and then they brought in Downs who also had one type of thing in his arsenal. It's confusing. It's confusing to me.
He's 27 years old. He should be entering his prime. Like this should be like he's built up, and now it's like last year was 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns, and this year is going to be the same. And he's got 3 years of this prime. He's ginormous, 6'4".
I mean, with Anthony Richardson, that's you can't expect it.
So that's why I take it a little easy. To me, I wanted his name on this list so we could have this discussion because I think it's worth having. And I think if you look at it, he played 13 games his rookie season, 1 touchdown, 500 yards. Second season, he played all 17 games, and he had he's building something, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. Then 2022, played all but 1 game, 16 games, 925 yards, 4 touchdowns. Okay, that's weird, but all right. Quarterback issues. Now they got Shane Steichen. They're going to figure this out. 2023, first year with Steichen. Okay, it's back to what we expected. 1,100 yards, but only 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And then
for a huge-bodied guy who should be like a red zone, dominant type of player.
Last year, 16 games, 800 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Yeah. And I get it. Quarterback play is an issue. But I'm also like, there's nothing there that I'm like, dude, I bet on him. Like, I'm going to bet on him.
It's kind of got like Michael Crabtree type vibes.
Yeah, we're like this.
Where it's
how is this not working?
Yeah.
I know how
you're a big body dude, but like you have like 2 seasons really that were,
I know how I screwed up Jacoby Myers, by the way, because on the ESPN, like when you look at their thing, the top season is actually their first season. And in my head, I'm like in my head, it
Whatever.
makes sense.
We know you don't know football, dude. We know that you're just posing.
I'm just now realizing it. But yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion. The other names for me at 27, so Diggs, and then I had Shakir. I'm with you there. I would put Calvin Ridley in this discussion, and then Brandon Ayuk. And then if you want to start, and then if you want to say Lad McConkey, he belongs in that low 20s where it's like, he's not a typical wide receiver number one. You hope they can develop a true wide receiver one because he'd be an elite slot wide receiver number two.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely agree. No, it's a fun exercise. I like these because it does. You got to try and like really kind of dig into the aspects of the game that
Yeah.
you're not often analyzing, which is who are the like the good players, but they're not entering that tier of their contemporaries anytime soon.
Yeah.
You know,
And I think and I certainly think that when you look at wide receiver cores as a whole, if you include tight ends and then your top three wide receivers, this list gets really tough then to say who's a bottom five receiving core, because everyone's got at least to do, because you say, oh, well, look at the Raiders. You guys both had Jacoby Myers. Yeah, but they got Brock Bowers. Like, that dude's a dude. And so it's like, are they a bottom five receiving core with Brock Bowers? I mean, if Jacoby Myers basically becomes your wide receiver number two, because Brock Bowers is your pass catcher one, like, then I'm like, all right, it's doable. So there's and at the top of the list, I'd argue the top three wide receiver duos: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, and now George Pickens, all in that discussion to be in the top three. And
AJ Brown, Devontae Smith would probably be,
be in that discussion
right there at three as well. But yeah,
it's fun.
Very interesting stuff. But this now is the kind of the dead point of this. Might be probably the most dead point, actually, if you think about
the Rams are in
NFL
Hawaii.
offseason.
That's how dead it is. The Rams are like, let's go to Hawaii. Did you see that?
There's like that weird. No, why are they in Hawaii?
They're doing mini camp in Hawaii.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, I think it's Sean McVay's literally just like
to get away.
It's like, hey, dude, you come to minicamp. Why? We're going to be in Hawaii. Oh, fuck yeah, that's sick.
Yeah.
Because minicamp's more just about getting the guys together, doing some install stuff anyways, and it's like connection Puka Nakua. I think there's some things they're doing down there with him and his and stuffs too. So, but again, clever, right? As opposed to just the Bears reporting to Hallis Hall. It's like,
right. Yeah, mix it up a little bit. That's kind of cool. I dig it. But yeah, so it'll be 2 weeks really before teams get into training camp, and then we, obviously we're off and running from that point on. But we'll obviously keep updated with the news. Looks like Shadur Sanders has the need for speed, so we'll dive into that. Driving 100 miles an hour. I didn't even know that was possible in Cleveland. I've never been there, but
it's possible.
Apparently it's possible. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for any of that and other developing news throughout the week. But until next week, we are off. We'll see you again sometime soon, talking more lists, most likely, on the next episode here of the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. As always, you can find us at FB Lounge Pod, for fantasysaqc.com, with all the other shows here as well. And be sure to go there for more information on our Toys for Tots League. Sign up. You can take on Mark and myself and help raise some money for a great charity. So we'll see y'all next time.